make things happen. But I'm Al Lockwood. I'm one of the trustees of the Royal Air Force Club, and I'd like to welcome you to this evening that we're having tonight with our online lecture. I'm absolutely amazed at the number of people and number of club members who've joined us. We're coming up to some 400 now, and I'd like to warmly welcome you and thank you for the support for these functions we're trying to have during this period of lockdown when we are unable to visit our favourite club in London. So, what can I say? 30 years probably since John and I first met, 30 years since Gulf War I. That sort of a little war that happened, which changed so many people's lives and changed the face of the Middle East for the foreseeable future. John was a young pilot, young flight lieutenant on a squadron, deployed to the Gulf, and as we well know, became a person who was well known to the public of the United Kingdom through the unfortunate night that he took part in his first operation. John has gone on to become not only a trustee of the Royal Air Force Club, but also a well-known leader and motivator of people throughout the United Kingdom and overseas. Tonight we have him, fortunately, here with us, able to tell the story from his own perspective. And I know that it'll be a fascinating one, and I am fortunate enough to hear it for probably the second or third time. So without any further ado, I just need to tell you that the meeting is being recorded because we want to put it online afterwards for those who are not able to make it. But I'd ask you to sit back, enjoy it. You're able to ask questions, use the question and answer facility. We will try and answer as many as possible, but unfortunately, I know, and I can see already that I have 8 questions, but we'll answer as many as we can after John's finished speaking, and then we'll close the evening out. But this will be available as a recording for the foreseeable future on the RAF Club's website. So without any further ado, Sqn Ldr John Peters, Royal Air Force, retired, Gulf War I. Thank you.
إلى الكويت بالتدخل السريع فالاتصالات مقطوعة بيننا وبين العالم كله.
At 2 a.m. local time on August the 2nd, Iraqi troops crossed the border into Kuwait, and its army of just 20,000 men was swept aside in a matter of hours by a force of tanks and infantry battle-hardened by their 8-year war against Iraq.
There is no place for this sort of naked aggression in today's world, and I have taken a number of steps to indicate the deep concern that I feel over the events that have taken place.
Saddam Hussein was given one last chance to withdraw unconditionally from Kuwait. Regrettably, the noon deadline passed without the agreement of the government of Iraq to meet demands of United Nations Security Council Resolution 660.
Are you pilot or navigator? And my response, I started to go, I cannot. Suddenly, you've got a baseball bat around your head, and you're on the floor, and that's shocking. I've never been hit with a baseball bat. 5, 6 men with baseball bats and rubber truncheons just beat your body.
Can we say I'm not she the sound of my
Good evening, and thanks very much for joining me this evening. I'm really quite humbled by the numbers. So, and this is arguably more difficult. One, because it's online. Secondly, because many of you are veterans. You're from the same family, the RAF family, as me, and you all have life stories, stories of valor, stories of joy, pain, hurt, and success and failure. We all have life stories. So I'm going to share my story with you. Yeah, I would say, you know, do you remember that photograph? If you remember that photograph at the beginning, it just means you're old. It's 30 years old at this moment. I am 11 days into my captivity 30 years ago. And with that in mind, you're probably thinking, why me? You know, why is it me sitting here talking to you this evening, 30 years after the event? Because I went to war with 50 others of my friends, and I met Al out in the Gulf. And you go, and they all have fantastic war stories. You know, they did 25 war missions. They got shot at by guns, by missiles. We lost one of our friends on the squadron. Yet none of them, 30 years after the event, get asked to tell their war story. So why me? Well, the reason is obvious. You know, we were the ones on TV. I mean, it's very strange being that image that you saw at the beginning. They reckon 650 million people on the planet saw those images. And we've got to remember, in today's multimedia world, back then, it was the first live televised war. And it's very strange being that image, because yes, look, okay, I went to war, got shot down, captured. But when I returned back home, I returned home to mass media attention. You know, I had radio, newspaper, television, everyone coming up to me saying, oh, you're so brave, you're so brave. We saw those pictures on television. You know, for about 18 months, 2 years of my life, I couldn't go to a pub and buy a beer. Seriously, anywhere in the country, it could be London, Manchester, Birmingham, anywhere in the country, I'd walk into the pub and the pub would go dead quiet. You then get a standing ovation in a pub. But then you wouldn't have to buy a beer all night, which was pretty good. But same for restaurants. No restaurant would allow you to pay for a meal, and people in the streets overwhelmingly coming up to you saying, oh, you're so brave, you're so brave. We saw those pictures on television. It's very different being behind those images. Yes, okay, I had been to war. It was the first day of the war, my first mission. We got shot down, captured, and I'd been taken off to Baghdad. I'd spent 5 days already in the interrogation center, being beaten and burnt, no sleep for 5 days. And I ended up in this concrete corridor with this black bag on my head, and I'm handcuffed and I'm sitting there waiting to die. And the Iraqis come along and they kick you awake and they take the black bag off your head. And instantly your eyes smart with the light, because you've had a bag in your head for 5 days whilst they beat you. You've seen absolutely nothing. Then they take the metal handcuffs off and instantly your arms sort of jolt out like this. Because if you've had metal handcuffs on for 5 days, every time they beat you, every time they smash you against the wall and kick you to the floor, the ratchet gets tighter and tighter and cuts into your wrist. You look at your forearms and they're swollen up like Popeye. You have these huge balloons on your forearms and they come to a dead halt at your wrist. It's as if you've squeezed your flesh down to your wrist. You have this sort of inch-wide bangle of lardy-type flesh, completely flat on one side next to a black, red, and a blue cut. And your eyes are going like this, and your arms are going like this, and they start hitting you and beating you and telling you that you've got to go on television. And the last thing you're meant to do back then was go on television. But they hit you, they beat you. They then get a gun out, and they put the gun against your head. They pull the hammer back and they say, Peters, you're going on television, or you'll never see your wife and children again. And in that moment, I remember thinking, is this going to hurt? Am I going to feel the back of my head come off it? Is this going to hurt me? Or does everything just go black, nothing? Or is it like you see in the movies? Do you suddenly come out of your body, you know, in a starry haze, looking down at yourself? So in that moment, I agreed. So I have a very different feeling when I see those pictures. Because when I see those pictures, I remember I felt a traitor. I felt weak. And I thought that was the last time my family was going to see me alive, and the enduring image my children would have of me. The children, by the way, who would never know me. My son was 2 years old when I went to war. My daughter was 6 weeks old when I went to war. The enduring image my children would have of me was that I was a weak traitor, failure of a man. So why am I here? I'm here because I'm a product of the media. That's why I'm here. And as I said at the beginning, what am I going to tell you? Well, I'm not going to tell you anything. I'm just going to share with my story, and I may then just share with you some of the things I learned, which, given the COVID and seeing that we're all locked in our bloody cells at home, that some of it may resonate with you. But basically, I'll just tell the story because I know there's only, what, 6 prisoners of war, RAF prisoners of war in the country. So, and hopefully none of them are listening. So what happened in my war? Well, I was just flying in northern Germany. I was doing my everyday job in northern Germany when suddenly over guard, you get the international distress frequency, kite formation, return to base, kite return to base. And you thought, shit, I mean, that was the recall back then for nuclear Armageddon. We flew the jets back to the ground, back on the ground, wandered in the squadron. Everyone's running around the squadron. Everyone's pulling kit out the cupboards, pulling maps out of the drawer. They've opened the war cupboards. We never opened the war cupboard back then. And the flight commander says, come in the office, stood there and says, right, Kuwait's been invaded. Where the bloody hell is Kuwait? I mean, who knew where Kuwait was before 1991? Anyway, Kuwait's been invaded. And what we're going to do is going to air-to-air refuel out there. Air-to-air refuel. I was in a Germany squadron. We never air-to-air refueled. You know, we'd never done it before. Okay, right. So we're going to air-to-air refuel out there. So what we've got is a brief and half an hour's time. And then we get airborne. If you get in the basket, you're qualified air-to-air refueling. We're going to air-to-air refuel to go to the Gulf, go to war tomorrow. Shit. And suddenly that is the whole pace of life. The whole pace of life, it doubles, it trebles. All the money that you ever want available was suddenly made available. They gave you tanks, they gave you bombs, they gave you frequency agile radios. They tweaked the jet engines and they gave us 30% more power. We're suddenly flying real war machines. And they paint them pink. Desert colored pink. But I can tell you, the next day when those jets came out, Hannah, you just had to fly a pink aeroplane. You know why? Because this was the one with the go faster stripes and the big engines, you know. And then we went to war. We came off the tanker. It was about 15, 20,000 feet, and every radar can see you at that. We're doing a high, low, high operation. So we're going a high level at 15, 20,000 feet, and everyone can see you. So we unplug from the tanker, we roll upside down, we start going down to low level, go from 20,000 feet to 15,000 feet to 10,000 feet as you start picking up from 250 knots to 300 knots, from 300 knots to 350 knots, to go from 5,000 down to 2,000, from 350 knots to 400 knots, from 2,000, 1,000 down to 500, 100 feet above the ground, up to 400 knots, and then squeezing height down to about 50, 60 feet feet above the ground, pushing the speed up to 450 knots, 500 miles an hour. You have suddenly gone from a bird's eye view of the world, looking down at the map. Suddenly horizons up round your ears. You are feeling the aggression of the sand and the rock as you're pushing on towards target. At about 100, 120 miles out from target, you plug the burns, you get that kick in the arse. You push the speed up to 600 knots, that's 700 miles an hour. Squeeze height down about 15, 20 feet above the ground. You know, you are kicking sand out the back in the deserts when 30 tons of metal is doing that speed. But I have done this 100 times for 1,000 times. This is what you do as a military pilot. But then suddenly about 80 miles out from target, you get a big puff of black smoke on the right-hand side, a big puff of black smoke on the left-hand side. Now, you've never been shot at before. This is the very first time. You see these anti-aircraft guns like ribbons in the sky come towards you. You see these plumes of missiles go up and go behind your cockpit. 80, 60, 50, more big puffs of black smoke on the right and on the left. The anti-aircraft guns like knitting in front of you, crisscrossing in front of you, more plumes of missiles. 50 seconds, 30 seconds, 10, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I pull the aircraft up to a climb. We were going to loft the bomb. Basically, we're going to slingshot the bomb a number of miles into the target. I'm going up and up into the half-dome missile zone. I've got no weapon package. My whole HUD is just dumped. I've got no weapon package. I've got no shit. I roll upside down. We'd failed. This was my first water sortie, and we'd failed, and there I am, upside down, right in the heart of the missile zone. I'm swearing. Then I remember thinking, go back to basics. Flying is about prioritization and capacity. Prioritize your tasks so you have the capacity to think, to make the right decision. Forget the guns, forget the missiles, get down to low level. We get down to low level. Then you've got that horrible thought. Should we go back? Should we reattack? I mean, how do you go to your mates and say you'd failed? How do you go to your mates and say you'd failed? But then you apply your brain. First day of the war, they've seen you coming, they know you're coming, you are going to die. You have a responsibility to accept the mistake and go back and do the job the next day. I hit the red button and the bombs go dud in the desert. That, for me, is the failure of my war. But they're still shooting at us. So what we decide to do, we'll head 50 miles to the north of the track and come back down to the south to rejoin the formation. We headed 50 miles to the north. I put the aircraft on its side to come back down to the south. When you suddenly get this huge kabang on the whole aircraft is shunted across the desert floor. We're 50, 60 feet above the ground, and the aircraft is rotating like a sycamore swing. We're doing about 550 knots between sand and sky, and I'm pushing the stick saying, I can't hold it, prepare to eject, prepare to eject. And John Nichol says, don't you bloody well eject. John Nichol's obviously my navigator. Fat Geordie, but I listened to him. I grabbed the wing sweep lever, threw it forward, the wings come forward, the aircraft lumbers under control. Wow, 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 wow. I looked down, my right-hand engine was on fire. Base of the missile gone right up my right-hand engine and exploded. It had also taken out my fly-by-wire system, so I've suddenly gone from a Grand Prix racing car fly-by-wire to flying the tailplane off just off mechanical mode. Okay, right. Right HP got right engine fire, right HP got right LP got fire signature press. The fire hasn't gone out. The fire hasn't gone out. Well, in peacetime, this would be easy. If this happened near where I live, live near Birmingham, I'd just pull the aircraft up into a climb to about 3,000–4,000 feet and go, hello, Birmingham International. This is Charlie Oscar Tango 20. We have an engine fire. Wait, checks. But this is war. They're still shooting at us. On the right-hand side, anti-aircraft battery opens up. The bullets, they hit my right-hand wing. They hit my sidewinder missile. It ignites the rocket propellant, and a 4-meter torch of flame shoots out the front of my wing and slowly but surely starts to cut my right-hand wing off. This was not my day. But people ask me now, were you scared? Were you scared? You are working too damn hard to be scared. You don't have the capacity to be scared. I never wanted to be a prisoner of war. I'd much rather be sitting here telling you what a fantastic fighter pilot I was. We're trying to solve problems. We're trying to get this aircraft back to base. So we're going, okay, right, let's head south. Right, we need to get back to the tanker to get home. Yes, well, we can do 400 knots on one engine, but we don't have enough power to get to height, and fuel's pissing out the wind. Okay, we can't make the tank. Okay, let's make the first airfield in Saudi, and things are starting to get worse as the aircraft's burning around. Okay, we can't make the first airfield. Okay, let's just get over the border and land on the road. The first road in Saudi, we'll land on the road and we'll just call someone and tell them we're down. Okay, we can't make the road. Okay, let's just get over the border. We'll bang out over the Saudi. Let's just get back. By which time I am completely tunnel vision, trying desperately to keep this aircraft above the ground. When John starts screaming, we're on fire, on fire. And I said, I know we're on fire. And he says, no, look back, look back. And I just remember orange, bright orange. The tornado finished 13 feet high. I couldn't see it. It was covered in orange flame. I looked out on my right-hand wing, and there's this huge bowl of orange flame that trailed down to the trailing edge, and grey fuel was just pouring out the back, and I couldn't see my right-hand wing. I looked back, and this wall of flame was coming towards us at a phenomenal rate. We were doing about 450 knots, and this wall of flame was coming towards a phenomenal rate. It was like flying the nose of the aircraft outside this comet of flame, and it was about 12 feet behind me. And that's why John was shouting, because he sits 6 feet behind me. So it wasn't a difficult decision. We made a number of checks. We put the aircraft into climb to make the ejection safe. You grab a handle, 3, 2, 1, eject, eject, eject. It is a quarter-second delay for the seat to go off. And it feels a lifetime. And then it's as if a massive giant grabs you by the shoulders and yanks you out the cockpit. And you're on the end of the parachute. The next thing you know, the ground just balloons up and suddenly, and you're on the floor. And there's hush. There's deathly hush. There is not a sound. And John Nichol landed about 100 yards away from me. I was a bit sat down, dazed from the ejection. He picked up his parachute, wandered across, stood above me, and went, "This will be the Iraqi desert then." And we laughed. The first thing we did in Iraq, we just sat down and giggled. I mean, it was so pathetic. You know, we were paid to fly a 30-ton, 30 million pound, 25, 30 million pound piece of equipment. We tanks, bombs, missiles, guns, computers. We have power. We're at the front end of the largest air offensive in the history of mankind. Power. And then you've got these two little pink bodies in the desert, and you laughed. It's not meant to work that way. But then you apply your brain. They've seen you coming. Okay, right, they're within 30 miles. Okay, right, we didn't get any warning on the radar. Okay, they're within 30 miles. Must be in a heat-seeking missile. Right. So we got our guns up, put a bullet spout. Right, we need to call AWACS, tell them it down. Okay, we've got our walkie-talkie and life jacket, so we'll just get our walkie-talkie out. Couldn't get the bloody thing out. Okay, stand by, stand by. So there we are, standing in the desert with two great big Ldr orange life jackets. We deflated those and got the walkie-talkie out. I mean, just to give you an awareness, the ground varied around our target for 350 miles by 12 feet. We're on a billiard table. Right. We need to get our survival pack out. It's in a box when we land on the end of a piece of rope. It's got our haversack on, little haversack that we put on run away with enemy. Okay, we'll just get our haversack out. So it's so we got to the box. Okay, right. We'll just get our haversack out. Tried to get out. We couldn't get out. Vacuum packed. Oh, okay. Stand by. Stand by. So we went. So there we are, standing in the desert with trying to evade the enemy, with two great big Ldr orange life jackets. We've got two great big bright yellow fiberglass boxes. We've got two RAF survival dinghies. They are about 1.5 meters long, 1 meter wide, a fully blown up Ldr orange canopy. And we've got two parachutes in the desert. They're about 10 meters in diameter. They're billowing in the wind. They are white, green, Ldr orange, anything but desert colored. And you have a burning tornado about 1/4 mile away with a plume of smoke going up to about 8,000 feet in the air. The experts say you are to evade the enemy. They say you're to hide your kit. Where? I was trained in Wales. But we are scared now. We slash all the orange, we bury it, we make a plan, we start to walk. We walked for about 2 hours, and then we saw a man, and we hit the deck. And I just remember lying there, staring at this man. I remember my eyes on stalks and my neck just pumping away. We lay there for 45 minutes, barely daring to breathe. It was a twig but you're talking two grown men lying there because of a damn twig, because people want to hurt you, people want to kill you, and you no longer have the power of the aeroplane and the system around you. You feel completely vulnerable. And after that, we just could not stand up. So we crawled. We crawled on our hands and knees for over an hour. How far can you crawl in an hour on your hands and knees? And after that, we lay on our stomach and leopard crawl on the ground, rolling over the slices, which you just could sense the Iraqis getting close. And then this dumper truck ride about a quarter of a mile away, and about 20 soldiers got out, spread out, and started marching towards us. And the inevitability of it, we're lying there. It's like me lying on a completely flat floor. There's nothing in between. So I'm lying there going, shit. You know, for all your education, for all your training, you can do nothing. You can't stand up. You can't move. You're not going to shoot at them. You've got two little pea pistols, really. And there's 20 Kalashnikov machine guns, and the inevitability is they walk towards you. And then they get to about 80 meters away from us. And then suddenly they see an all hell lets loose. They all let rip. And hundreds of bullets, the first bullets bouncing 2-3 inches from my head, and then suddenly spilling out hundreds of bullets just bouncing around their heads. And I'm looking at John, and John's looking at me and says, shall we go out with the bang? Shall we go out with the bang? And what he meant is, well, shall we stand out, take a couple of shots and expect to get split open? Why did he say that? Well, the last time the Royal Air Force operated in the Gulf before 1991 was in the 1920s. And then the Bedouins said, if ever we catch an Air Force pilot, we'll cut their balls off and sew them up into their mouths. So John and I were in a pub one day going, you know, don't want to get captured, you know. So we're in a pub, and he was saying, hey, JP, we're a crew, aren't we? And I said, yeah, we're a great crew. And he says, yeah, but I don't want to get captured. I said, no, I don't want to die that way. And he said, no, but he said, but we're a team. And I said, yeah, we're a great team. He said, but I don't want to get captured. And I said, look, yes, we're a great team. No, I don't want to get captured. What point are you trying to make? And he says, well, what if we got shot down and captured? What if they got us mixed up? And I went, what? Yours in mine and mine in, oh, I don't want to die that way. I went, I know, look, if it looks like we're going to get captured, what I'll do is I'll shoot you, and then I'll shoot myself. And he turned to me and said, no, mate, I'll shoot you. And this was just a joke in the bar. And now he was asking me for real. Shall we kill ourselves or give ourselves up? And I don't know why, with all these bullets bouncing around our heads, and we were nose, our eyes were like dinner plates. He said, I turned to him and said, no, there's always hope. Why do their job for them? And that was our decision, to give ourselves up. And we never said a word to each other for 7 weeks because we were kept in solitary confinement. But I can tell you, sitting here 30 years later in my own home, best damn decision I've ever made in my life. They got to us, beat off blindfolded, took us off to Baghdad, 10 hours to get us to Baghdad, which is great. Our information is irrelevant. But then as we approached Baghdad, for those who can remember 30 years ago, for those who are not, look on History Channel. But for those who can remember looking at TV, can you remember Baghdad being bombed and the anti-aircraft guns and the bombs going off? Well, as they started to see that, things started getting nasty. They started grabbing your hair and grabbing you by the hair and smashing your face against the side of the lorry, hitting around with pistol butts. And then you entered in the city, and it's a maelstrom of noise. People going into the city, people going out of the city. Everyone had a Kalashnikov machine gun and is manically just firing in the skies. Then you got the bombs going off. But the bombs aren't the most frightening things. The most frightening things are those big anti-aircraft guns. They're things that look so damn good on your television screen. They're the most screaming, shouting, rasping sound. They shatter your head, they shatter your spine. You're in the city. They're basically smashing your face against the side of the lorry, hitting around with pistol butts. You've got the Kalashnikov machine guns going off. You've got the bombs going off, the anti-air guns left and right through the city. And then suddenly the van comes to a halt and they kick you out the van. It feels like you go through this corridor of troops who are kicking, rifle butting and thumping you. And they push you into a room about 20 feet by 20 feet. And then within 2 seconds of getting in the room, you suddenly hear a bomb hits the room in the far corner. The whole of the ceiling comes down. The whole of the 2 walls get blown up. We get picked up 2 meters, get thrown 4 meters, and end up under a pile of desks, rubble, and chairs. When the dust settled, they pick me up. They throw me in a side room. It's pitch black. I've still got blindfold, handcuffed. I'm trying to undo everything, kick myself around the room to see if there's a way out. Then the door slams open. I don't know. A number of men come in and my world goes black. You then end up in a room, a small room, and you can feel the lights on you. It's intense. You can smell the sweat and the smoke, and there's 6, 7, 8 men there. And you're blindfolded, handcuffed, bag in your head. And you hear the voice. Name, Peters. Rank, flight lieutenant. Standard interrogation technique. We're meant to give you name, rank, number, date, birth back then. Any other question, I cannot answer that question, sir. We are meant to die before any other information comes out of our mouth. So I'm standing there, bang ahead, name, Peters, rank, flight lieutenant. Are you pilot or navigator? I cannot. Smack, and suddenly head explodes. They hit you around the head with a base bat, and suddenly you're on the floor. And for 40, 50, 60 minutes, they don't ask you a question for 40, 50, 60 minutes. 5, 6, 7 men with base bats are just smashing your body. Your whole body is just lolling around like a rag doll. You can't even form the F word in your head. Everything is just being muddled around. They pull you back up. Name, Peters, rank, flight lieutenant. Are you pilot or navigator? I cannot. Smack, and they hit you again. They basically hit you with base bats. I've got 2 crushed vertebrae from my ejection. They know your back is weak. They hit my spine. You know, I've basically got a broken back. They're hitting your spine with base bats, with rubber truncheons. They set your hair on fire. They burn you with cigarettes. They threaten me with gang rape. They threaten to cut my dick off. They threaten to shove guns and knives up my ass. You're hearing people being tortured. You know, I've been blown up 6 times. I lost over 2 stone in 7 weeks. You're in solitary confinement. This is not a game of rugby. This is not a pub brawl. This goes on for minutes. It goes on for hours. It goes on for days. And it feels like you're in a swimming pool. You know, when you're in a swimming pool underwater and you've run out of breath and you're holding your breath and your ribs are starting to expand and you're holding pain just before you get to the surface. And just before you get to the surface, someone else jumps in and shoves your head underwater. I don't give a damn how strong a swimmer you are. Suddenly you are kicking and thumping and fighting to get to the surface because you just want to get to the surface and go and take a breath. Well, that's what it's like being in the little room. You just want to take a breath. You just want to stay alive. And that's instinct. That's animal instinct. And in between the beatings, it's dignity. You are not going to let them win. You're not going to let yourself down, your family down, or your friends down. You are not going to let them win. And that's dignity. And this just carried on for 7 weeks. The pain, the humiliation, degradation, and then violence. And then suddenly the bombing stopped. I mean, we were at pitch black 18 hours a day, semi-pitch for 6. The ground was vibrating for 18 hours a day through the bombing. And then one day the bombing stopped. And sound and movement in captivity and sortie is everything. And suddenly you think, you can't help but hope. And then the following morning, there's a knock on the door, a knock. Normally this 2-inch metal door flew open and they came beat the crap out of you. But so there's a knock on the door and the door opened. And there was one of the interrogators, Iraqi, had a grey suit on. He did up his button. He went, "Good morning, Flight Lieutenant Peters. I would just like to tell you the war is over. If there's anything my staff can do for you, please ask." I mean, it was macabre. And he said, you know, He said, now, are you hungry? Yes. So they gave us food. Now, are you cold? Well, we were virtually, you know, just had a Hessian suit in a concrete box. It was like a fridge, freezing cold in captivity. They threw us blankets in, and they said, look, if you'd like to go to the toilet, just knock on the door and my staff will take you along to the toilet. Just weird. Then they took us outside, forcibly shaved us and trying to clean us up, gave us new suits and took us outside into this quadrangle. And we were put outside and it was a pale blue sky and they gave us tomatoes with salt. And we're sitting in the pale sunshine, wonderful, eating tomatoes. And there was a guy there, looked a bit like Aziz, the foreign secretary. And he was there with a clipboard, a major, and he went, I'm really sorry, the coach is late. The war's done havoc with the roads, don't you know? And he said, oh, you're Royal Air Force. Oh, I love the Royal Air Force, he said. I love Britain. And have you been to Oxford? He said, you know, Oxford's a beautiful city. And I would really recommend going to the inn at the head of the river. Have you been to that pub? And you just go, this is unreal. They then put us in a van, a coach, still hitting us on the back with pistol butts, drove us about 20 minutes and pushed us out through the world's press into the Baghdad Novotel. I mean, being an Air Force officer, let's admit they could have chosen a better hotel chain, really, than Novotel. But we pushed in, and the Red Cross were there going, "Oh, okay, oh, welcome home, welcome home. We're going to be home soon. Oh, you really look a bit thin. What would you like to eat?" Now there's about 10, 12 of us. There's American and Brits, men and women. We've all been in solitary confinement, all been in prisoner of war, all starved. And we haven't said a word to each other, but we all said exactly the same thing. So I just want you to just think for 2 seconds, what would you like to eat if you have been starved for 7 weeks? Now, most people I speak to, they say bacon butty, English breakfast, fish and chips, all great, fantastic answers. But we went chocolate. And the Red Cross went, sorry, we don't have any. But then one young man said, we're in a hotel, and he ran around 120 rooms and got all those little chocolates off the pillows. And that's how we got released. So now, 30 years later, what remains with me? The first, actually, is I couldn't give a toss about being a prisoner of war. I've never suffered any post-traumatic stress. In fact, I'm the opposite. That which doesn't kill you makes you stronger. I have no problems with being a prisoner of war. What bothers me? I failed to drop my bombs. You know, when we all go through flying training, all that investment, I failed to drop my bombs. And that's what stays with me. If I dropped my bombs and I still got shot down, I wouldn't have an issue at all in my captivity. I failed to drop my bombs. I failed to live up to the expectations that we have, you know, the years of training and the money spent on me. What, do I have any regrets? No, not really. Well, perhaps I do have one now. At the time I didn't, but I do have one now. My son's now 32. He became an army officer, so that's probably one regret. But no, I do have one regret. As I say, my son is 32. Do you know how often my son has got laid off my story? That's just wrong, just wrong. But it's very weird being this prisoner of war. I mean, you go from this black box where you're completely isolated. And this is the thing, most people concentrate just on the POW bit, but it's not. It's the whole sequence of events, of the unrelenting sort of uncertainty of change. You go from training to go to war, but never expecting it, to suddenly you're going to war, training in a totally different environment, to then go to war in the desert, never expected that, then the mission itself, then the shot down, then the prisoner of war, then return to mass media attention. And it's all this sequence of events. You go from a sort of this black box of complete isolation as a prisoner of war, being beaten, trying to hold on to some sense of identity. And then you return to the white light of mass media attention. Why I mean like white light, you can't see a damn thing. You've got so many flash bulbs going off the world. You're in whiteout. You can't see a damn thing. But the same thing is you're trying to hang on to identity there, and you're trying to balance off. I mean, it's weird how I didn't change, I don't think, but the world has changed around you. The perception of who you are has changed around you, and you have to adapt to that. You can no longer be the fighter pilot, because suddenly you're being treated very differently. It's the way people ask questions. And I've been asked tens of thousands of questions since I got back. And it's very different between men and women. Most men ask me questions. You don't want to know about me. They want to know about themselves. It's almost, he seems normal. You always put that word seem. Somehow I must be hiding psychological damage. I must be hiding it really quite well. But the questions are very much, what's he got? But the questions are about them, not me. Most men want to understand, how would I be with a baseball bat out around my head, my hair set on fire? It's this male macho shit. You don't want to do an experience like I've done, but you just want to understand, could I, given a similar experience, come out seemingly normal? Whereas most women who ask me questions, they don't ask about themselves. They ask and think about people they love. Their husband, their brother, or their very worst fear, your son or daughter. You don't want to see your son or daughter be me in the little room. And the reason is, war is personal and it is emotional. And as I said, I can no longer just be the fighter pilot when I return, and everyone going, well, why have you changed? Well, eating glass fighter pilot for dropping bombs is one thing, but you return and the perception is different. I return to thousands of letters. I return to 25,000 letters. And the majority are from people abused. So you have to dial up that level, because otherwise you have to just adjust how people perceive you. And I'm going to read you a letter now, if I may. And it gives you an idea of how we've been treated. It's from an American lady. Look, I used to be a fighter pilot, my eyes, but now I'm old. It's from an American lady. She's in her late 70s now. And it gives you how we've been treated since I got back. I did ask her permission to put it in our book, and you'll see why. Thank you for telling a story in your own words. I don't know whether you're aware of it when you recounted it. Your unflinching honesty is a beautiful gift to your readers. It certainly was for me. Your story has had the most profound impact on my life. Because I'd been sexually and physically abused as a child, I immediately identified very deeply with your experience. However strange it may seem at first glance, considering the differences in age, gender, temperament, or external circumstances, I recognize many of the places you describe as ones where I've also been. Whether it be the helplessness and humiliation, the fear of what is inevitably coming, the sense your body is there for them to do as they please, or that you're threatened with extinction as a person with a place in the scheme of things, the shame and self-loathing at having been defeated and somehow let yourself down, or the determination to survive and to overcome it all was and is painfully familiar. Your story not only moved me, it served me as a bridge to recover my childhood experience of more than 35 years ago. I invariably found it a source of inspiration that gave me strength and hope and steadied me through the difficult times when I had to face my own memories. When I finally confronted my own father with what he had done to me as a child, he sodomized me over a period of 5 years. I thought about you. I had carried with me the terror of those rapes since the age of 7. And what I learned from your story is that telling the truth was the only way to free myself from both terror and shame and to move on. Your courage during your ordeal and your honesty and humor in sharing with strangers not simply the appalling details of your captivity, but the emotional impact it has had upon you as a human being, have thus taught me lessons I will not forget. In this, I owe a great debt of gratitude. I cannot tell you how happy I am that you did survive and overcome. It's all behind now, but I want you to know that you helped one person, unwittingly for sure, but genuinely nonetheless, just by being who you are and sharing it so freely. I can only thank you again, and with all my heart, wish you and your loved ones understanding, peace, and happiness. That's real courage. How does someone write a letter like that to a complete stranger? How would you reply to a letter like that? You know, defense writing skills doesn't really hack it, does it? As I say, I returned to 25,000 letters and they were coming in at about 1,000 a week. So what have I learned from this experience? It's simple, really. ABC. First, you have to accept the brutal facts, the brutal reality, and this may resonate with some of us all in lockdown. However frustrating, we have to accept where we are. How do you get to acceptance? Well, first you have to acknowledge if you have a sense of failure or things you've done wrong. Should have, could have, 2 minutes ago is a waste of time as a prisoner of war. So should have, could have, irrelevant. Don't dwell on the past, acknowledge it. And the real thing, if anybody is having difficulty at this moment in time, forgive yourself. Forgive yourself that you haven't maybe been as strong as you wished, or that it has exposed vulnerabilities. Why? I'm not particularly religious, but forgiveness is really important, because if you don't forgive yourself, you can't accept being here and now. And if you can't accept being here and now as a prisoner, you will die, because you are labeling failure of passes. Learn from failure, but don't label it, because by forgiveness, you can accept here and now, and then you start to learn. And that was the biggest lesson I learned in captivity. I can learn faster than they can make me make mistakes. The B stands for look beyond the walls. I have no more attributes than any of you. If I had looked at the walls and the beatings, I would have given in. I don't have that strength. So I looked way beyond the walls, way beyond the beatings. I planned family holidays. I planned the business I now run. So look beyond whatever limitations you feel you have, because then they just go subsume into something in the way of where you're going. And C stands for calm. You've got to find a way of keeping yourself calm. Your worst enemy in captivity, and arguably in this lockdown, is our own imagination. It works against us. You have to find a way that keeps yourself calm. You need to commit to something beyond the walls, and I'm something real and meaningful to you. For me, I promised myself in the way in, I expected there, being driven into Baghdad, I'm either going to die here or I'm here for a minimum of 10 years. I'd seen the movies Midnight Express. I will not come out a damaged human being, and I will see my children when I get out. So I committed to a minimum of 10 years. So sod 7 weeks. Everyone goes on about 7 weeks. I'd committed to seeing my kids grow up in 10 years' time if I wasn't killed. And community. Why do you think they separate prisoners of war? Because learning is a communal experience. We learn faster. We are stronger together. And that's why many of us are having troubles in this isolation, because human beings are meant to learn together. We are communal creatures. So please do not go away thinking I'm a damaged human being. Do you know how much confidence an experience like this gives you? What's the worst you're going to do to me now if you don't like this presentation? Are you going to beat me up? Are you going to torture me? Are you going to kill me? I found in captivity, I'm not scared of death. And that gives you huge confidence to engage with life. And I'm going to end on one story, if I may. Imagine yourself in captivity. And this is the worst place. I wouldn't wish it on anybody. and you haven't had any sleep for 4 or 5 days. They've beaten you solidly. Sorry, haven't had sleep for 2 to 3 days. They've beaten you solidly. And one of the things no one ever thinks about is they haven't given us water. And, you know, as we all know, 3 days or more without water, we die. And so after 2.5 days or so, 3 days, you're really dehydrated. Your head's hurting, your lips are splitting, and you're sitting there. And they come around and they say, tea. And they lift up your bag and head and they feed you tea. It's very sweet. It's got cardamom seeds in it. And you go, shukran, thank you in Arabic. And then they went along and they say, tea, and you hear another voice go, shukran. You think, oh, thank God I'm not the only one. Then they go to another voice, shukran. You think, oh God, I'm not the only weak one. I'm not the only one who's here. And then they get to the fourth guy along, who's an American. And they say, tea, and the American goes, no, sir. Your little ears prick up, very strange. Then you hear the Iraqis going, you have tea, tea good for you. The American goes, no, sir. Then you hear the Iraqis go, look, tea not drug. You have tea. The American goes, no, sir. The Iraqis went apoplectic. They went, why you no have tea? Why you no have tea? And the American stood there and said, no, sir, I can't. It's bad for me. It's got caffeine in it. I mean, as a Brit under my hood, I just thought, wanker. But here's the rub. On the 25th anniversary of the Gulf, the American prisoners of war came over to Britain and we all celebrated our lives together. And I went up to that guy and I went, caffeine, coffee, wine? And he said, well, of course. He said, I'm a Mormon. We don't believe in caffeine. Why should I give up what I believe just because I'm going to die? And that's all of us. We all can choose as to how we deal with either being a prisoner of war or COVID or isolation and all that. It's a choice and it's who we are. And actually through that, the way we deal with these things is the core of our identity. And actually, you don't need external circumstances. It's who we are and what we believe. And that is the choice I made in my captivity. To die, if I was going to die, being who I am. So I hope there's something in there. I hope, I mean, it's a 30-year-old story. A number of you may have heard it before, but I hope there's things that you found interesting in that. So with no more ado, I'll hand back to Al. Thanks very much indeed.
John, it's not the first time I've heard that story, but it never ever fails to impress me what you went through and how you've dealt with it since. And on behalf of everybody who's here this evening, I'd like to thank you most profoundly for sharing it with us. It is incredibly moving and actually, I have to say, inspiring. Thank you so much for it. And needless to say, it's provoked one or two questions. So if you feel like it, you feel up to
me the questions, go on.
I'll see if I can find one or two that don't refer to fighter and bomber pilots. So that a lot of the questions and statements from people have said, thank you so much for sharing it, for being so open and honest. And actually, as I know, you've been telling this story and telling your experiences for many decades now. And everybody I've ever met who's heard it has said pretty much what I've said is, have another gin and tonic. Is that it's so impressive, and the fact that you've been able to share it with us and share it with people. So I'll start with Mike Harwood, who you and I know, and to say hats off to you for your courage. And then in the 30 years have been inspirational. Here's his question though, is that when was the last time you learned something new about your experience way back then? Have you just kept finding more and more interesting nuances of it?
Yes, recently I now offer someone a bottle of champagne for an original question. And what, about 2 months ago, I had to hand out 2 bottles of champagne. And the most intriguing, and they've got to be, you know, opposite questions. And this lady asked me, did music play any role in your captivity? And I went, God, at the time, 91, I remember when I was sat at, you know, before the war, I was lucky I was in Bahrain, not Dhahran. So we were in 5-star hotels sitting around the pool. And at the time, Listen Without Prejudice, George Michael's album had just come out, and I listened incessantly to Mother Love, which is about a mother losing a son. I don't know why. It wasn't morbid. I just love the tune. There's something haunting about it, if you know it. And it played in my head, and I remember in captivity thinking about Mother Love and thinking about my mother and how she would feel, and emanating from that tune. So yes, the interesting thing, you know, when people say talk about trauma, well, they say talk about a bad experience and adversity. An adverse situation only becomes a trauma because we apply meaning to it, an extreme emotional response, and we can misappropriate that to create a meaning that stops us sort of functioning later on. Well, actually, the real advantage I had with fame is I had so many questions that actually people help. Because they ask questions, you go, did I? Yes, I did think that. Oh, and it helps you sequence the event, but also helps you broaden what you thought about. So, and that was the most recent, only a couple of months ago. And I thought, bloody hell, there we go. There are original questions.
Okay, John, wonderful. That's fine. Obviously, Helen and your children and so on were well aware that you were incarcerated. And you know,
oh, I've got Helen here if you want.
Yes,
Helen, do you want to?
That was just going to be my invitation.
Yeah,
I know Helen's there
because I know a number of people. Helen, do you want to?
Because one of the questions that's come up is that how did Helen cope and your family overall cope during this the fact that you were there on television, known to many millions of people. How was it for you, Helen?
Well, obviously, quite a situation, a bit like, it's almost like one of those out-of-body experiences that you're sort of living through it, but you feel as if it's sort of happening to somebody else.
Yeah.
But I mean, when he was first shown on television, of course, you may recall that at that time we had no idea what had happened to the guys, and his fellow airmen who were in his foreship. None of them had actually seen what happened when John's aircraft was hit. So actually it was a relief, because that was the first time we knew that they were alive. So contrary to what most people would have thought, it was actually a positive thing when he was shown on television, not a negative.
Yeah. Oh, wonderful. That's great. On a sort of slightly more technical background, you and I, John, know from that time that as an Air Force, we were Cold War warriors. We'd never been in that sort of conflict, and we were totally unprepared for it. Do you think what happened to you and others in the Royal Air Force family changed the way the Air Force looked at escape and evasion training for something and the equipment we carried?
Yeah, obviously. I mean, I think it was interesting. I think it was the zenith of Western military or aviation even thinking up until that time. I think it really scared the Russians and the Chinese at that time. They thought they had great systems, and their modus operandi was basically blown out the sky by us. But yes, we had to up our game because we just didn't quite have the kit, and it's very difficult for modern day pilots and aircrew and people in the military to think back. But it was sort of all rather sort of obvious until you actually go to war and say, well, we don't have this, we don't have that, we don't. And so suddenly it was this rush of getting to the mindset of, God, we're actually going to go to war. But you saw that evolution throughout the war from, when I was shot down, it was still dumb bombs, and who the hell invented JP233, for God's sake? Yeah, God. And
do you remember, we never got to train with them.
No, we know, because it was too expensive, and it didn't work out there, did it? But we didn't know. But it was funny. We still had this. I hate to say this is critical of the Air Force, but it is all of us, because you go in Russia. That if the Warsaw Pact comes across, yeah, we don't have electronic assets and stuff, but don't worry, we're Royal Air Force. We'll flow low and fast, and we'll fly below. I know Sam 8 goes down to 30 feet above the ground. We'll fly at 20, 30 feet above the ground. What, in Europe? How far? How many fields can you do? What, when you're getting locked up? It was just naive, and it made the Air Force grow up. But it also showed that we took that step and got very operational very quickly. And actually, if you look at what we've done since. It was basically that we basically we're trained to do almost Second World War flying with jets. But the Gulf was then suddenly, to my view, we suddenly introduced computers and technology properly. And since then, if you look at what we've got now, you know, it was the evolution of air power. So I think it's the last traditional war, to my view. Now it's just so much more complex, and the people are so much more operational in today's world.
Yeah, very much so, and I agree with you entirely on that. Go slightly differently, John. Sally Ann Evans has just said, what short and long-term provision was made available to support your psychological health and rehabilitation back into work as an RAF pilot? I mean, what actually happened? What care did you have when you came back from that experience?
Well, here's the balance, because back then it was almost left to station commanders. So there were station commanders who went, you know, had some who said, you know, they're aircrew, they don't need it, you know, which was outrageous if we think about it now. But even back then, people thought that's outrageous. We had a really good station commander. He basically said, what I'll do is order everyone has to go to see the psychologist, because then it just removes any stigma, because we all go into the room, all come out with a card, and basically one person may, you know, give us a call. We were given direct attention. Call me cynical because we're famous. And basically the way they dealt with it is they don't say, are you okay? Because by giving people sort of almost conversation, you can send them into trauma. So they tend to brief everyone around you. So I was effectively walking in a bubble, I suppose. But reality is, I mean, even from when I was in Cyprus, if you read the book by Gordon Turnbull, who's the RAF psychologist, his book's called Trauma, he suggests that I hadn't really suffered any, you know, obviously post-traumatic stress, but nothing more than that. And he said I was quite vocal, and therefore he used me to help unlock some others. So I don't really feel I've ever had a problem, but I've never had a problem with personal stuff or emotional stuff. You know, I'm quite happy to talk about that. So, but the Air Force was extremely good at that. Yeah. The pastoral sort of care, certainly from what we experienced. But that wasn't across the board. As I said, there were still at this time when people made individual decisions between different stations.
Thank you, John, for that. I suppose it's a question from Richard Ashton. Hi, Richard. He thanks you yet again for so eloquently putting the story across, but it's a kind of question for both of you. How easy was it to settle back into family life after all this?
Well, relatively easy, I think.
Okay.
A long time ago, 30 years. Yeah. I don't seem to remember he didn't come back and say, oh, I've been away for 7 weeks, so I'll do all the late night duties and getting up and change the baby and do all that. I don't remember that anyway.
No,
I did promise in captivity I'd do the washing up, but that didn't go right well either. No, I mean, you see in the movies, you see all these big conversations about, you know, long, big, deep conversations. It doesn't happen that way, you know. Sort of, I'm sure this aligns with most people. You know, you've effectively, and this is very much the military lifestyle. When you go on detachment, or certainly when you go to war, when you'll have experienced that. You were away for months. You've basically led separate lives, and you know. So yes, okay. So I'd been in prison ward. Helen had 2 kids. You know, she's breastfeeding and potty training at the same time. And we had an incident a couple of weeks after I got back, where you're starting to get that normal couple friction, and with Helen's parents. And I just got a bit irritated, and I threw out the comment, you know, you don't know what it's like to have a baseball bat around your head and your hair set on fire. And Helen just shot back at me, well, you don't know what it's like to have all the press and 2 kids and all that. And so that's when you go, oh, okay, so you have that conversation there. And that sort of, you have these bite-sized conversations like any couple, that slowly but surely you find your collective story and understand the pressures on each of us.
Yeah, absolutely right. Standard. John, I suppose we've gone past our 1 hour. Are you happy to continue maybe 1 or 2 more questions?
Yeah, we're happy. Okay. Are you happy?
I mean, it's really lovely to have you both together. It makes it so much nice. Let me just, I'm just scrolling down. There's so many good questions here, and I'm sorry to everybody that we can't answer all of them tonight because there are a large number. We'll try and get them emailed, put on the blog afterwards. So do you think what you experienced and your fellow captives have changed the way psychologically the military and the medical profession approach these challenges now with PTSD?
In summary, I don't think we're any different from any other. The soldiers in Afghanistan, the guys who go to Syria or wherever. War exposes individuals to extreme circumstance. I don't think we're any different to anybody else. We're just, we were a newspaper story.
Yeah.
But I think we've grown up with now we've grown up as the military to accept that it is not weakness when people have been pushed over the limit, that we need to care for them and provide them with support so that they can re-engage with their normal lives. We're asking all of us, we've all had this psychological contract that we sign on the line to give our lives for our country in a way that you say, maybe we don't even agree with the decision. And therefore the contract should be by return that we support those who are prepared to make that decision.
Absolutely. Thank you, John. You're quite right. So, okay, just to finish off then, sort of a few lighter ones. Not quite so light, but what are your feelings towards the Iraqis now? Forgiveness or resentment? And that's from both
neither. I'm ambivalent. What are you going to do to someone like me? I hope, I've got a gorgeous wife and two beautiful kids. Yeah, of course. But so is Ahmed. Ahmed's got no legs now, though. Yeah. So our job, your job, is, you're a really nice bloke. Yes, but not when you're in your flying suit, in your jet, dropping bombs on people. It's a role we play. And how, for all the illegality of what they did to us, let's get real. How are you really going to treat someone like me? So I'm ambivalent about what the Iraqis did. I don't condone it. I know it's illegal, but it is what it is. So it is what it is.
It is. I suppose the last one. Have you ever met any of the Iraqis who interrogated you since those days?
No, I had a really weird experience. I was asked into the MOD. I don't know, about 18 months after I got back. And I came out, and it's when you're a flight attendant pilot, you never get invited to MOD, because people make coffee there and wing commanders, so it's all a bit weird going in there. Came out, and I was in the pub down the road, and even as I say, it just feels weird. It's almost as if suddenly the whole room went black and white TV, and the door went vum, 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 vum. And this bloke came in, and he said, I had met him. And he went, hello, John, I'm from this department. Oh, okay. Because I had everyone debrief me seriously when I got back. And he went, oh, you're looking really good. Yeah, anyway. Oh, by the way, some of the people you may not like, who were with you, don't worry, problem sorted, boys visited. Anyway, lovely to see you, bye. And he walked out. And I'm saying this is 30 seconds of my life. And even as I relate it, I'm almost going, did that just occur?
Yeah.
And what I've interpreted, did he actually say what I think he just said? And have I interpreted right? Am I being told? So from my perspective, I don't think they're around anymore.
And on that, John, we'll draw this evening to a close. On behalf of all of us, I'd like to say thank you so much for sharing it with us. It's a remarkable story, particularly with the way that you've approached and you've taken it on and shared it with people. And I know it means an awful lot to many people you've shared it with over the decades since it happened. So on behalf of all of us here this evening, I'd like to say thank you very much. And Helen, I'd like to say a special thank you to us as well, from us as well, for joining us.
Pleasure, thank you.
Now, everybody, I hope you've enjoyed that. I'd just like to say the club, we hope, we had a trustees meeting yesterday. We're really hopeful that we will be up and running before too long, and when this lockdown finishes. We have our forthcoming events slide up so that you can see what is coming. And I'd also just like to mention to you that we are obviously so grateful to the many thousands of you who've contributed to our COVID-19 fundraising effort to maintain the club and to keep things going. And if any time, visit our Just Giving page, or if you'd like to contact the club direct and then support the club financially, we'd be ever so grateful. It's been an amazing evening. He is an amazing man, and we're very fortunate to have him as a trustee of the club, and we're very fortunate that he's able to speak so openly about what happened. Thank you, everybody, for being here tonight, and I wish you a very peaceful and happy evening, and I hope to see you back in the club before too long, when we get back to some sort of normality from this life we've been leading. Good night.